Selamat siang. Good morning. My name is Peter Verhezen, and I'm very happy and honored to be here. It's a mixed group. We have students from UGM and international students, as we have also our students from University of Antwerp, from Belgium. And so today I was asked for an international seminar, and so once more thank you to the organizer, UGM here. I was asked to talk about a subject that's a little bit more, should I say, universal, more particularly talk about artificial intelligence and generically about what's the importance of ethics in digital transformation. Now, just some introductory comments or remarks. And you're all from Faculty of Economics and Business, right? So in economics, we assume that humans are rational, logical. And it seems that in economic theory, we are ignoring emotions and feelings. One thing, and so me as a finance person and a professional negotiator for IMF, what I've learned was that, okay, we are rational beings, and in finance, there are a lot of theories that will assume rational behavior. However, more and more we see that capital markets, negotiation, not just rational. We human beings are not always rational. We are emotional beings. One of the things that I've learned in Asia is that Asians, being pragmatic, are willing to combine the logical mind, but also the heart. And so feelings are important. You may ask, what in the heck is he talking about? What has that to do with digital transformation? Well, a lot. And what exactly, and here is the essence, in fact, of what I'm going to explain the next 1 hour, 90 minutes. Computers, and more particularly machine learning, AI algorithms, are nothing but Bayesian probability thinking. Logic, rational, made by humans. But our behavior is not like that. And so, computers will help us, AI will help us to become smarter. But what computers cannot do, because they don't have the ability to feel, they can mimic feelings, as they do already, but they don't understand feelings or emotions. So that is where humans come in. And again, speaking to my Antwerp colleagues and students here, what I've learned, particularly in Asia, is that in business, it's not just about having the best product, but also get along, have the network, have the feeling with people that they trust you. That's one introductory remark. My secondary introductory remark, why I accepted to talk about ethics and digital transformation, is my job, besides being a professor, is advising corporate boards, corporations here in Southeast Asia, more particularly in Indonesia, Singapore. And boards, beheerraden, as they say in Dutch, are those representing the owners of organizations, be it family, state, multinationals, who have to deal with what we call in economics a VUCA world, a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous situation context. A board needs to prepare the future, an uncertain, complex, volatile, ambiguous future, more so than ever. And boards and their executives and here it becomes relevant to you, managers, need to make investments that will hopefully help to create opportunities in the future and reduce risks. And here AI and digital transformation comes in. Today, everybody is talking about artificial intelligence and what AI can do for business. What are the benefits from business? People even say if you don't embrace AI, you're going to be left behind. And that's true. What I want to emphasize today is, yes, AI will definitely help us to become more innovative. But what AI cannot do is to make us wiser, which is related to ethics. Meaning, creating a situation that implies not just objective facts, but also subjective feelings. Here it is. Subjective feelings related to values. Values that is nothing but ethics. And values and ethics can, but doesn't have to, be connected, related to, be it religion, culture, whatever it is. So, I'm going to talk about what I call here the good, the bad, and the ugly of AI. So, as a board, an advisor to boards, I will tell boards you need to look at AI as an opportunity to be competitive, remain competitive, to invest in it, and yes, embrace it, the good stuff. But please be aware of its limitations. There's a lot of BS going on AI. And so the purpose for me, BS bullshit, is I want to make sure that you have an understanding within just 60 minutes of what AI can do and what it cannot do for business. So let's start. As you can see here, I was able to write a book with people that you may know here in Indonesia. Corporate governance, which from the capital market perspective has been driven by New York Stock Exchange and London Stock Exchange because historically they have been the biggest capital markets in the world, and they've been predominantly dominating what's going on, what is supposed to be good corporate governance, good behavior, and so on and so forth. So we wrote this book as a reaction of what is different in this part of the world, Southeast Asia, China, India. And in a way, it's a summary of a course I was teaching at Melbourne University, Melbourne Business School. But the point I'm trying to make here is that boards needs to be aware of the diversity of not just cultures, but context as well. So that's one thing. The good news, though, for everybody, because here at least we have two different cultures, if not more, is that AI transcends these differences. Your application of Uber or Grab or Gojek on each of your phone will function exactly the same. So they will ignore emotions and feelings, subjective beliefs, and culture. It's pure mathematics, probability thinking. That's the good news. But we need to be aware as a board, as those that invest in organizations, that those differences cannot be ignored. So that led me to another thinking, a book that I just published, about, okay, how can leadership be responsible in a world that seems to be taken over or going to be taken over by machines, by computers, by AI algorithms? And my point, in essence, is, yes, we should, as boards, as businesses, embrace AI, including the ChatGPT. I'm a big fan of it. But I also see a lot of limitations. I'm not afraid of ChatGPT, and I'll tell you why at the end of this lecture. So yes, let's embrace AI, but my God, let's be also aware what it cannot do. So in a nutshell, as the title of this book says, AI that makes us smarter will help us a lot to become more competitive and innovative and whatever you have. But it will not make us wiser. And wiser in this case means ethically conscious. In fact, let me tell you this, and that's something engineers do not understand, or maybe they do understand, but they don't seem to acknowledge it openly. Artificial intelligence, as the word says, can be intelligent. Intelligence is defined as having objectives and you reach certain objectives. That's what intelligence means. Predetermined almost. I take a bus, and suppose that the bus knows through an algorithm how to drive within UGM campus from one place to the other, autonomous driving. That's very intelligent of that bus. We didn't do it, it was a driver with us now, but you can have autonomous driving buses, no problem. Very intelligent. But it is not conscious. Consciousness is different from intelligence. And let me be very straight on this. People who claim that computers can be conscious, it's nothing but not scientific bullshit. A computer cannot be conscious. Consciousness, conscientia, and we get into values and ethics. That a computer cannot. And any board member will need to make decisions about investments. What is it that we want to achieve? Pure efficiency, maximization of profit at the expense of others? Or is there something more, which brings us, which I will not touch today, but will bring us to what is business and what is the legitimacy of business? And legitimacy, that word legitimacy, can never be answered by a computer. Legality, yes, because you can, and that's exactly what the ChatGPT does. Legality is nothing but norms written in code, corporate code, and literally almost to be grabbed from the internet. But it doesn't say anything about the legitimacy, which is different from legality, let alone legacy. So that's, in essence, what I want to talk. But let's be more practical. I recommend you will get the slides. This is a very funny one. This is Bill Gates, Microsoft, owner of the ChatGPT, talking to Socrates, the famous philosopher living at the same time as Buddha and Confucius, putting into an international context. And they're talking about AI. And so, yes, digital transformation clearly will help us. It's changing our life. No doubt. And therefore, business has no choice to follow and, in fact, stay ahead by completely embracing it and trying to, invest in it. But it is not the same as critical thinking, let alone ethical thinking, which is slightly different. That a computer cannot at this point, and I don't see for the foreseeable future, the next 20, 30, 40 years. That's where humans, executives, boards come in. They need to give legitimacy to the organization. Are we allowed to do this or not? Are we allowed to do that is an ethical question. It's not a financial question. It's not a question about pure logic or algorithms. It's about something else. And so the first thing I want to say, yes, AI, statistical seeking patterns, which basically allows us to predict more accurately. Example, do you know what the wet dream is of Amazon? Amazon, their recommendation engine, and we know we have Amazon in Indonesia. Well, not very active, but you know Amazon, right? You have other applications. Amazon, based on the data that we leave behind on TikTok, on Amazon itself, on any internet application, is able to, quote unquote, understand what we like. So in my case, I like strategic financial thinking. I like ethics, philosophy a little bit. And so yes, Amazon would know books that have been published that I'm not even aware of. And the wet dream of Amazon is, based on the behavior, because I do online, I buy books, and they know exactly what kind of books I like. And they may like to send me books to my home before I'm even aware that the books was published, because the likelihood, and I'm using these on purpose, the likelihood, the probability that I will like the book is very high, because they know my behavior of the past data that I've been putting into the application. But I will buy the book. So the question is then why they don't do it. Because today their recommendation engine is about 80-85% accurate in predicting my behavior, which leaves 15% error. That error is still quite big, and getting to my place may be difficult, because if I don't like the books, as a result of the error 50%, they have to pay. And that's still costly. Now, the moment they get accurate, and they will get that accurate, to 95%, they will indeed realize their wet dream and send books and whatever it is. They do it already with Netflix. Same thing. So what AI is really going to do for us, business, is facilitate prediction. If you know in that uncertain, volatile future, the behavior of consumers faster, more accurate than your competitor, you'll have a competitive advantage. And so there, obviously, AI is providing you that advantage. So, I just want to make sure that you also understand some notions. If we talk about artificial intelligence, as you can see here on the slide, we're really talking about a very narrowly defined scope within AI, be it machine learning, deep learning, whatever it is, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But it is very narrowly defined. Netflix is narrowly defining what movies do you like. Amazon, what books, what stuff you like. So you cannot ask Amazon Prime, please serve me a coffee now. You need a robot that is prepared to do that, but it's a different application. So what we do see today when we talk about AI, it's about narrowly defined intelligence. There are scientists at MIT, and the name is here, Mr. Kurzweil, and many others, who claim that in 2048, that's not too far away from now, that the computer will become as intelligent as us. Now here, I have an issue. Yes, the computer will be faster, more speedy, more accurate in particular domains. Why? Because they have the data, access to data, and they're much faster in processing those data than we ever can. But they don't have the flexibility, and I don't see that's happening anytime soon. So that notion of singularity, where the computer will take over, like you see in the movies, Terminator and all that, again, to me, it is science fiction, but not necessarily science-minded. And again, one of the reasons is, let me see. Okay, sorry, let me just show this slide. Sorry. One of the reasons that the computer will not match the ability of board members, executives of you is three. One, we can communicate in a flexible manner. The knowledge we have, if I'm asking you, can you please help me to calculate something, and I ask you, in 10 minutes, can you bring me some coffee? It would be unpolite to do that, but you will be able to do so. I cannot ask the computer. He will calculate the probability, whatever it is, but he will not bring me coffee. Meaning, today the computers are narrowly defined, and even if they will be able to be speedier and more accurate, they don't have the flexibility that a human being has. Humans can adapt to any environment. Our students here from Antwerp are now adapting to an Indonesian culture. Data that is very different from what you're used to in Antwerp. Similarly, if you would guys come to Europe, you will have to adapt. A computer, and we know that, for example, the Chinese have a lot of data. They're one of the best in the world for face recognition. Why? Because they have huge data and they're running the algorithms, so the algorithm to recognize faces is 97% accurate, more accurate, in fact, than humans. Humans about 95%. But if you use that face recognition algorithm from China into Indonesia, or for that matter in Antwerp, it will drop to 90%. Why? Because the faces of Indonesians and the white guys and girls here are different than it is in China. So the data needs to be trained. Now, the computer will be able to catch up and fast. But it's not so, what I call plasticity. It doesn't have the plasticity that we human brains have. So that's the second characteristic. Number three, we autonomously can create things. And that's the most fundamental. A computer, till now, there's feedback systems, but we decide still what needs to be done. And the computer is still a tool. So I just wanted to make that remark, that we are still ahead. Now here is indeed, I may not, because of time constraints now, that's how a computer works. It's nothing but Bayesian statistics. What it does is here, if I use here, so you've, oops, oh yeah, that's groovy. Here, whoa. Yes, we have a face here, right? And the face now is deconstructed through layers in this face recognition algorithm. And it will basically come up at the end with, okay, after thousands, in fact millions of pictures, they will pick up that this particular face through the layered system is indeed Mrs. Sarah. That's how the computer, that's why it's called deep learning, because it goes in deep layers, different tens and tens, and in fact, hundreds of layers. And with the ChatGPT, it is so complex that it's quite amazing what it can produce. But it's nothing but, in fact, basic Bayesian probability thinking. And that's very powerful, but it's based on past data. One of the funny parts is, if you ask the ChatGPT for Microsoft right now, when those have it on their computer, and ask ChatGPT, what is Queen Elizabeth probably going to eat tonight? I repeat the question. Queen Elizabeth, UK, what is she going to eat tonight? The computer will give an answer. Why? Because in the computer, which basically goes to 2021, they will know what the Queen has been eating roughly, although I don't think that's a national secret. Suppose it's not a national secret, then it will be available. What the computer doesn't know, that unfortunately, our dear Queen Elizabeth has died. Because the data are not updated yet. So that's one of the weaknesses, I guess, of the system. So the data is crucial. The accuracy of data is crucial. And that's obviously very crucial for any business, that we have the most updated data. In a nutshell, I will highly recommend you to read the book by Julia Pearl, Professor of Mathematics at UCLA in Los Angeles. He wrote a wonderful book, and he claims as long as artificial intelligence, that today, as I said, is probability thinking, as long as they only see correlations, computers will never be as intelligent as humans. Because the difference between a human being and a computer is that our brains always look for causal relationships and not pure correlations, which is a deeper level of understanding. And so, yes, we are able to ask the question of why. You try to ask the question of why to a computer. It will give you a lot of gibbish, but it will not answer the question. Okay, so just as background. Another one is, computers do not understand context. You program a computer to clean up your room at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever it is. Or like the hotels. 10 o'clock, they will knock on the door. Clean up room, clean up service. Let's say it's a computer. Suppose, or not suppose, I guess you all like to sleep in a little bit on Sunday. I guess what? If you didn't program, the computer will come in and knock on the door 10 o'clock on Sunday while you're still sleeping and say, I want to clean up the room. Because it doesn't understand that Saturday is not the same as Sunday. It's programmed to clean up 10 o'clock every day. It doesn't care whether you have a wish to sleep one day. So you have to program it. It's not flexible. It's a human being that needs to tell the computer, please, every day 10 o'clock except on Sunday. So computers don't understand. In fact, computers don't understand anything. ChatGPT has no clue what it says. What it does accurately well is using billions of data, churn through the algorithm, find correlations, and come up with something that makes sense. And because there's so much data on internet, and it's much faster and more powerful than humans, it looks like ChatGPT is very clever. Whereas, it is nothing but a dumb machine on steroids. It's not conscious, it's extremely speedy and fast, but useful for business. So please understand, I'm criticizing an issue, but I'm still embracing AI because it's useful to predict quite accurately if we have stable environments about behavior of consumers. If I know, like Netflix, Amazon, and just name them, or even the application of Gojek and Grab, it's very powerful as long as we're living in a non-too VUCA uncertain environment because we need the data short term. That makes me to the second point. Very briefly, it has geopolitical issues. Somebody, more particularly Putin, said, those that control artificial intelligence will control the world. So there is now a geopolitical, competition going on to seek AI supremacy. Those that will have the edge in algorithmic thinking, including applied in military warfare, are going to control the world. So China and US are definitely picking up, and so are other countries. Now, just to give you a little bit of background, and I'm not going, this is not my theory, this is not the subject of today, but I just want to show you here, this is the, first of all, AI, there are 4 battlegrounds, let's say, where US, China, UK, Canada, these are the major countries who invest a lot in AI, are battling it out. One is access to data, obviously. 2 is the computing power to train the algorithms, 1, and number 2, then to run the algorithms. Number 3, talent. Those scientists, engineers, computer scientists that making the algorithms and come up with new technology that hopefully will be implied, including quantum computing, which can be quite powerful, specifically for the power necessary to come up with more and more sophisticated equations. So talent is crucial because it's still people that are making those algorithms. And number 3, institutions that support the algorithmic thinking. China is the furthest in protecting their environment and supporting, let's say, data. Data privacy is happening in China, but as long as the government can have access to it. Europe takes the opposite stance. Europe is the one that is very philosophical almost about it, principle-minded about privacy of data. The US is pragmatic within certain legal boundaries. So if you're talking about data, China is ahead. If you're talking about computing power, China is almost at par with the US. Talent, it's not Americans who are bringing all those algorithms alive, But at those American institutions, a lot of foreigners from all over the world are working there. And so from a talent perspective, the US is definitely ahead. And number three, institutions, you could argue that China is supporting AI in business, in fact, controlling it. And of course, the US is, almost at par, and Europe a little bit behind because we are refraining, we are trying to regulate. I'm not against regulation, but we're trying to regulate issues. If you're looking at the data here, the numbers in terms of research and development spending, you see that the US is ahead, but not much anymore. You see clearly that China is picking up fast in absolute terms. If you're looking at the next slide, in terms of the global R&D in 1960, some time ago, it's clear that the total spending of R&D, including artificial intelligence, because the artificial intelligence is not just new, it has started in the 50s, about 70% just US, and the rest of the world 30%. Today, we have a different picture, just the opposite. 72% by the world, and only 28%, followed by 24% China. So you see the world is changing, and I think you should be aware of that. All right, that brings me to the topic, in fact, today. The first two parts were introductory remarks. Algorithms do not understand ethics. That's the topic. Ethics and digital transformation. They do not. And why is that? Here is the answer. The answer is that AI is pure, let me repeat for the third time, probability thinking. Logical, rational. Almost like our economic theories think we humans think. It's not true. We humans think not pure rationally. We are emotional. We have feelings. And let me remind you what I said earlier. This is maybe a weakness to a lot of people, but in my opinion, it's a strength. We have brains, we have heart, we have a soul. Use it. Why would you use just this part and ignore this, the heart? So, and we don't. In fact, the way we think, it's proven today from a neuroscientific perspective that emotions play an incredible role even in rational thinking, but that's another topic. So, the so-called weakness, what people say weakness being emotional, can become a strength. And that's something computers cannot do. And more, this is a diagram that I developed. In fact, I based myself on some studies. What it shows is two variables. It goes from, let's say, okay, I'm going to use this again. Here, short term to very, long term, and we're talking about prediction. The longer term away, the more uncertain, the harder it is to predict. We business want to know what's going to happen in the future. Question is, can AI help us? The other variable is, okay, are we looking just at associations and patterns, correlations, which is exactly what AI does, or are we really thinking about causal models? Hypothesis testing like we do in pharmaceutical industry or whatever it is, or are we thinking about moral imagination? The answer short is AI is extremely powerful if it's short term within a stable environment, and when we talk about correlations. Example, radiologists looking for cancer. Today, computers are extremely good, likely superior to experts to find patterns of patients that probably will get cancer before they get it, before they have it. Why? Because a lot of good hospitals have data on patients before they got cancer and then when they got cancer. And so that data put into an algorithm with all the deep layers and the variables, computers can compute all kind of probabilities and can come up with this patient most likely will that kind of cancer. It's within a short time. It's stable because our body doesn't change overnight in terms of developing cancer. What I'm saying is, for the last 50, 100 years, I think why we get cancer is for similar reasons. It's what I call a stable environment. Stock trading. Today, the New York Stock Exchange, about 65% is done by robots. But here is the caveat. 65% trading is within milliseconds. It's within minutes. If you would ask, what is the stock price, and I refer now what Professor Ted yesterday said, what's the stock price of Garuda in the next 2 years? I can almost bet my life that the computer will give data, but there is no guarantee and most likely, again, on purpose I use this term, most likely, whatever the computer will say is not going to be accurate. Why? Because there are so many unknown variables and likely emotions involved that are not today into the data. So that's also important. So what it means is that algorithms are extremely powerful when we talk about correlations. So Gojek and Grab, what we're using here, very powerful, but it is very hard to ask for a hail ride for in 1 week from now, isn't it? I don't think the Grab, the application allows it. Why not? For the same reason. Next week is long term for an algorithm like Grab, Gojek, or by extension Uber, because the variables, the uncertainty, the volatility, the complexity, what's happening today and in 1 week from now is too high for the application to predict accurately, to determine one particular driver to pick you up next week, Saturday at 12 o'clock noon. Application cannot do it because it's only a week. So the further away in time, the more uncertain, the more difficult. Weather forecast, same thing. 20 years ago, it was hard to predict. Now we are already good about 10, 14 days. If you ask any person in that field, can you predict the weather in 1 month, 2 months from now? Computer cannot do it yet. I'm pretty sure with the computing power of algorithms that yes, even there we will make advancements and computers will be able to predict 1 month ahead. The point now is, what has that to do with ethics? I make a very clear distinction, which scientists, especially engineers, do not make. I make a distinction between what I call an objective factual world, the rational world, the factual world, and what I call a subjective belief, a subjective world, and by extension, I'm willing to dare to say, an ethical world. An ethical world is a decision, an ethical decision or a political decision to have a vision. Now, what does it do with business? Simple. Today, business can just focus on profit maximization, factually, efficiency, rationally. And I remember, talk back about Garuda. I advised Garuda 15 years ago. And I remember telling the director, I was asked to do some consultancy on cost. And I told the director, okay, as a typical consultant, you have 12,000 people, 2,000 are redundant. Why you don't fire these people? That's economic thinking, rational thinking, cost. That's exactly what multinationals do. Right? You want the organization to be more profitable. So I told them, simple calculation, 12,000 people, 2,000 redundant. They don't do anything, or they're not efficient, effective. Get rid of them. You know what the guy told me, the director? He said, Peter, listen, you don't understand, he said. We are an SOE, a state-owned enterprise, a BUMN. A state-owned enterprise, he said, has two objectives, Peter. It has the objective to indeed optimize or maximize profitability. So I agree with that part with you, my dear friends, he said. But we also have a social objective as a state-owned enterprise, creating employment. So why would we fire 2,000 people, even if they're not efficient, and I have to give them, my other department has to give them an unemployment fee. So I better keep them. It's more effective. So meaning, even in this example, it is not pure rational thinking. There's something else involved. And that requires a vision, a purpose, a meaning. That a computer will not tell you beforehand. It will mimic purposes and whatever it is. It puts up the data, but it will never be able from itself to create that kind of thinking. And so, for that purpose, there are two spheres. And I borrowed this from an anthropologist who basically did research with baby apes and baby humans, human babies. And you see clearly that animals, they deal with natural boundaries, the objective facts. Humans apparently have a vision. They think ethically, inherently, innately, which animals do not do. So similar by extension, I'm not saying that animals are computers, but what I'm saying is computers do not think in terms of vision and political choices, and definitely not in long term. So in that right up quadrant there, computers will be quite useless. They're extremely powerful here. So if we talk about efficiency, yes, use AI. When you talk about vision, seeking meaning, they're not going to give you the answer. Try with ChatGPT. Please, Mr. Computer or Mrs. Computer, what would you recommend me to be the meaning for my life? Try. It will give you a lot of gibberish from philosophy, but it doesn't apply to you particularly. And even if you put the data, I'm female, I'm 25 years old, I'm Indonesian, I have that religion, it will give you an approximation based on the data it finds on the internet. But it's nothing but, I repeat, correlations, associations based on the data it has access to. It's not unique to you. It doesn't think about the feelings you may have, because it doesn't understand that. So, even, here it is, neuroscientifically, because that's the theme, ethics, digital transformation. Neuroscientifically, I won't go in detail, you can read the paper. Neuroscientifically, it's been proven now, if you think about yourself factually, as an animal would, survival, it is this part of the brain that is activated. If you think ethically, which is basically thinking about meaning, purpose, and philosophically, it means usually not thinking about yourself egocentrically, but about what's the meaning for you as a family, as a community, as a business, the vision of an organization. I bet you all, if you go to apply for a job, you want to work for an organization that has some meaning, that will treat you well, isn't it? If it doesn't, why would you work for them? If your boss doesn't treat you well, why would you care? So it's almost human, which is reflecting that subjective feeling that I've been referring to, or the ethical sphere, to be distinguished from an objective factual sphere, because you make free choices there. That is something that we see in the brains. Here, if you think about not yourself, but about ethical, moral values, there is a different part of the brain that is activated. And so, in management terms, applying neuroscience, it's called the low road and the high road. And obviously, the high road is then the ethical. So meaning, the egoistic feelings are the ones that is for survival. And we all have that. But the moral, ethical non-egocentric feelings, which makes us distinguished from animals, and by extension computers, is a very different, unique part of the brain that we can use. We may not use it, but at least we have the ability to use it. And that is what I call that we have the potential to be wise. We're not necessarily wise, but that wisdom that's directly related to ethics is only a human characteristic. Nobody else, at least on the planet here, for what we know, is able to do that. So, that brings me to human collaboration. So I'm a big fan of collaborating AI and humans. In a nutshell, today, that narrowly defined AI is used to augment our decision making. We're using computers, algorithms, AI, to make better predictions about that, let's say, quote unquote, within a stable environment, consumer behavior, or our virtual assistant. In fact, our phone, our smartphone, it's not a mobile phone, it's a smartphone, isn't it? It makes us smarter. It's a lot. Visual recognition, Siri, or what's it called? Alexa is on it. You can just use it for making you smarter and making better decisions. Or you can automate certain processes, robots in factories and all that. That's all algorithmic probability thinking. That is very powerful. And so, yes, we should use it. Here is an example of a bank. And that brings me to the essence of this lecture, where I will show you, yes, the computer, and more particularly algorithms, will be able to take over certain jobs from people and from us. And you see here, jobs in accounting, cash disbursement, what's it called here? Revenue management, financial controlling, all that in blue will be taken over by automated algorithms. You don't see cash withdrawals from bank cashiers anymore. In fact, it's all automatic. It's on your app. You don't even use money from the ATM anymore. And the ATM is still a robot. It's cashless. So a lot of the issues and jobs that we have in banks are automated. And AI will take over and is taking over. And less humans will be involved in those tasks. So there, banks have no choice but to follow. But, as intriguingly to me, this functions here, what's it called? Hold on. Risk management, audit, external relationship, business development. A computer is almost useless. Why is that? Because in business relationships, here it is, relationships that involves feelings and emotions. A computer doesn't understand that and will not be able to help us. Business development, humans only can do that. So you see here, purely from a job descriptive perspective, that yes, in particular fields, we should use computers. In others, humans will still be superior to any computer. Let me give an example. An example that I know quite well. In credit, finance. It's been proven if you want a mortgage loan, yes, that a computer is superior to a human creditor, credit officer. Why? Here the emotion can be negative. Why? Because factually speaking, scientifically speaking, it has been proven that we need only 4 variables to determine the probability that somebody will pay back its mortgage loan. 1, income. 2, who your parents, where you live. 3, how old are you? And whether you're not sick. But that's data you're not allowed to ask, apparently. Those data gives you a probability of about 90% accuracy that you will pay or not pay back the mortgage loan. A human being is influenced by emotions, positively and negatively. So suppose I'm the credit officer and I see an old couple in front of me and they're asking for a loan. I say, oh, Cassian, sorry, should give that to them. Or a beautiful woman, say, woo, yeah, okay, why not? So meaning or emotions that are not necessarily objective will influence our decision making. And in this case, you want to make sure as a bank that your credit gets back. So computer is doing a better job than a human being. In negotiation, it's the opposite. In negotiation, I bet humans are superior. However, it is true that computers will be able to calculate all the probabilities and scenarios, but I can tell you from experience, in negotiation, it's about feelings and emotions and manipulation and deceit and whatever it is involved to get to a deal, to clinch a deal. It's not that I know when I get into the negotiation table that I know it beforehand, I need to do this. It's the combination of your intuition, which is related to experience and your feelings and all that, and your mind, how you negotiate, how you get a deal. And I can give you many examples. There, a computer cannot take over the job. It will help you to bring up particular scenarios that you may not have imagined, but it will not be able to take over negotiation drops or a judge in court. So these are just examples of why, or the good news, what it can do well. Now here I come to the essence of the lecture: the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good ones, and I just give you examples. I don't have to go too much into it. I'm going to pick up maybe one or two. Here you see a couple of examples that you are familiar with. And let me pick up just one, the number two. Netflix, you know, so I don't have to explain that. It's pure algorithmic. It's artificial intelligence. This lady here is a Stanford graduate, and she started a corporation because she felt, and it's different from Indonesia, the shops do not close until 10 o'clock. In the United States, it's about 7 o'clock. In Europe, 6 o'clock, shops are closed. Busy executive ladies, they work beyond 6 o'clock. And on Saturday, Sunday, they have other things to do than going to shop. So what she thought as a business proposition, here it is. She said, okay, I want to serve executive ladies to buy clothes, fashionable clothes. And how did she do that? You fill in, as a female, a list. You pay $20, who you are, your measurements, and your preferences. She brings it all together. She puts in an algorithm. And the algorithm predicts, based on what is fashionable, predicts what is the most fashionable clothing for that particular lady in the next 3 months. So it's basically a quarterly box that's sent to the customer. Every 3 months, a box arrives at the house of these ladies who subscribed. And guess what? It's called Stitch Fix. Why it is called Stitch Fix? Because the algorithm doesn't get it right from the first stand. So usually it takes about 3 rounds with feedback system in the algorithm that allows to calculate accurately what that particular likes. And so that's hence why Stitch Fixing it. And so the first time that she sends, or that the computer is sending something, here about 2 items are received and the 3 items are refused by the client and sent back at cost of the company. That data refusal is put into the feedback system of the algorithm, and the second time, the second quarter that she's sending the box, about 3-4 items are accepted, and usually in the third round, all 5 items are accepted. So the algorithms, without any human intervention, is able to predict accurately what clothes these females like. Magic almost, isn't it? It's not magic, it's pure probability thinking. But it does it very well. And even more so what she did, this lady was extremely smart. Not only she used smart computers to make smart decisions, but she employed fashionados or fashionadas, I don't know how to call it, meaning designers that put a personal note in the box. Why? Even those ladies may know that it is a computer who tells you what you should wear. We still want a human to have a look at those boxes, confirm it, and treat us as a person. And that personal note, literally written by that person, that was the distinction between all the other corporations trying to mimic her and her company. Today, it's a $4 billion company. In 4 years, it went to an IPO at the NASDAQ. Now, that's an example where AI extremely powerful. Another example that I personally like is Schiphol Airport, which is a Dutch airport. Now, what's so unique about that? What's unique is, you see the lamps there, the LED lamps, right? Yes? Okay. Under normal circumstances, those LED lamps is nothing but the airport authorities buying from the corporation. In this case, Philips, Dutch company as well, they buying the lamps. And the airport is responsible for the lamps. Because of artificial intelligence, because of the Internet of Things, they changed the business model. Today, the airport doesn't care because they changed the business model by saying, Philips, you going to be responsible for these lamps. We're not buying lamps from you, we're buying light from you. You are responsible for enlightening, literally, our airport, not necessarily figuratively. Meaning, it is Philips today that has a contract, paid a fee per month to make sure all those LED lamps are alight. What does it mean concretely? It means concretely, in those LED lamps, you have sensors. Those sensors are beaming data through the Internet of Things into the database of Philips, and an artificial algorithm is calculating the lifeline of that particular lamp, and Philips knows exactly when the lamp needs to be maintained or replaced, without any human intervention. So algorithms here help to make Philips very effective, get a very different business deal, and God forbid, make it more sustainable, because this is an example of a circular economy, which is an ethical decision. It's not necessarily rational. It's a decision we made because we believe circular economy is something that is good for us. And that is related to wisdom. And so here I feel that's the good part of AI, where AI can help us to become more sustainable, to be more effective, to bring new kind of services and products that we have never thought of. So again, I'm a big fan of AI. But remember, I still think they're dumb machines on steroids. But I like these steroids, because it gives us a competitive advantage. Now here is the bad stuff. The bad stuff is that the data they're using are still biased, because we are biased. We are not always objective. I told you that. We have feelings, we have emotions. We're not always logical. We're something irrational. That behavior is reflected in the data. Now, through statistical averaging, you could argue that artificial intelligence is lowering a little bit that biasness, but the biasness is still in the data. It doesn't disappear. So thinking that a computer is less biased as a human being, not really true. Statistical averaging, yes. Call it the wisdom of the crowd. But it's not bias disappears. Number two, is the decisions that AI is giving you fair? No. It doesn't understand the notion of fairness, because fairness is an ethical term. It just does calculation, and if a society thinks slavery is all right, it will tell you, okay, the most effective way of transporting slaves from one place to the other is this. Now, since 1890, it's not allowed anymore slavery in most countries. Okay, let me have a contemporary example. Today in Chicago, the police force is looking at reducing crime in particular areas of Chicago. So what they do is they're looking at data. Where are the highest crimes today? Well, obviously in particular areas. It happened to be areas which, of course, are poorer than the mid-class, or areas where mid-class level people live, more wealthy people. So in these poorer areas, unfortunately, it happened to be quite a number of black Americans. So the data will tell you, in that particular area, majority black Americans, a lot of crime. But it doesn't explain you why there is crime, poverty, and so forth. So what they're using an algorithm to determine accurately and beforehand where there will be potentially a crime to be happening. So it is about predicting the crime in areas. Well, you know what's going to happen? They will send police force to these black American areas, and yes, guess what? They will stop people consistently, black Americans, and say, what you're doing here, and so forth. It's a form, no, it's not a form, it is blatant racism. And the algorithm doesn't change that, on the contrary. So is it fair? Well, from a rational perspective, it's very fair, because we're going, if the objective is reducing crime, it makes sense, it's quite intelligent. But it doesn't take into account consciously what the implications are of that decision. And of course, the whole issue around unethical use of data, fake news, blackmail, the Cambridge of Facebook, and so forth, they're all issues that we have to think of. The privacy of data, and of course, cyber threats. This is all the bad stuff. Now, it's even getting worse. It's getting worse because we believe now that data is more objective than what we think is scientifically objective. That is, I won't have the time to go in detail, but it's not true. Number two, the whole issue around probability punishment that I explained to you already, and also thinking about politicians and people now that are using data, thinking that data is the only way to go. So they're focusing on what I call historical objective facts. Okay, very good. But if you think that you're taking political decisions which is related to the other sphere, which I've called ethical, moral, social sphere, you're wrong. Because you don't take into account that you as a human being can take another way and that you can improve community and society. You just rely on historical data like computers do. We humans can do better, okay? And there's an interesting book by Zuboff from Harvard about surveillance capitalism. Now here, I mean, that's a political debate about democracy versus autocracy, which I'm not going to have here. But the point is, are you willing, like in China, that the cameras, everywhere you go, you're going to be filmed and you're going to be recognized and you're going to be shamed if you do something wrong? We Westerners, we are a little bit worried about that. Indonesia is somewhere in between, but you got Suharto for quite some time. You're too young to know. But I tell you what, you have to be very careful what you're saying. Today you can say more things, but even then, but okay, you can ask me questions after. I don't want to go too much in detail there. So that brings me, I'm going to stop this. I'm going to straight to the conclusion here. My point I try to make is indeed that executives should make smart decisions, which includes embracing AI. Yes. But it should acknowledge that taking ethical decisions is from a fundamentally different nature, something computers cannot do. That I want you to remember. And so the way I basically summarize that is this: as any executives know, you need to be commercial viable. Being ethical would be, without being commercial viable, no good. You go bankrupt. You need to have products and services for which people are willing to pay a price. In other words, you need to create value. You need to have something that creates cash flow. At the same time, you need to be thinking about how can you be more innovative? What are the insights you have? AI will be helpful. You need to also be able to think about what's the future going to bring us in business? Exactly what boards need to do. Where to invest today that will give us opportunities. AI can help to an extent. But at the end, you also need to think as an executive, as a manager about what is it that we want our company to be? What is the legitimacy of our company? And that requires social, ethical, and I add here environmental thinking. Something a computer cannot help us with. It can help us to calculate how to do it, but the why question, why we should do it, is a pure social, ethical question with a social, ethical answer. The so-called subjective belief system that humans almost have invented, some will argue religiously inspired, but that's something a computer cannot do. It will mimic it, but it cannot do it by itself. I'm going to be brief. I'm going to say this is a model that I developed. Let me go to this. So basically, what I'm saying is to create value in the middle here is nothing but three factors. One is increase the predictability. That's exactly what Netflix does, Amazon does, Gojek, Grab, Uber does, meaning use an application that allows us to predict the behavior and provide a solution to that. Number two, we need to be adaptable to situation and increase our insights, which is nothing but innovation. Innovation, yes, pharma industry does that. Running scenarios, algorithms are very useful. They can help us. So our AI will be able to help us there. But we need also, a third factor is resilience. Humans are able to have the grit when there is adversity, when there is a crisis, when there is complexity, to not give up. One of the biggest, as a former entrepreneur, let me tell you, starting a company is bloody hard. Especially the first 3 years. It's called the debt valley. If you first cross the first 3 years where you don't make cash flow, fine. You need to reach the 7 years bargain, and then you hope that your company grows. So what I'm saying is, as an entrepreneur, as any business person knows, you need to take risks, and you always will have ups and downs. That's a characteristic that you will need, resilience. Now, all these three is what I call smart decision making. What we also need is having that kind of purpose that gives us legitimacy, and what I call here ecological, ethical thinking, because that provides us the vision that you want. You want, as I said earlier, companies that have that vision. So computers will help us in the first part, but won't be very useful in the second, and that's where humans come in. Okay? And so my last slide, I think, is, I've seen that one, so I'm going to go to this slide as the last one. You can read it. What I want to say is this. Yesterday we had the Indonesian ambassador in China, and so he gave a summary at the end. So let me give you 3 points he gave. Let me give you 3 points which I think are important. With AI and social media and digital transformation, I think there's a lot of positive stuff, the good stuff that I have mentioned. But one of the points I'm worried about is that we don't think critically anymore. You think whatever appears on Facebook or on TikTok is true. It seems that we have lost the ability to distinguish truth, which is related to my objective reality, and what I call falsehood. In Greek philosophy, they call it doxa, or opinion. An opinion is not true. It can be, but not necessarily. Why would somebody personally express a frustration, emotion, and here emotions are negative, an opinion on Facebook and thinking that's the truth? We have seemed to have lost that. That's dangerous. So thinking that AI is equal to the truth, be careful. Number one. Number two, although I believe that AI can be very, what's that now? Useful in making us more innovative, we humans have that ability of imagination. And that is why sometimes I say leaders of an organization needs to be plumbers and needs to be poets. Plumbers, those that can find solutions. And AI can help us with that. But AI usually are not very good poets. Poets meaning have a dream, but also materializing the dream, meaning have a vision, which is the ethical part that I was referring to, or that purpose that I was referring to. So that's something only humans can do. So the imagination, the imaginative power we have, the creativity we have, is something that is not matched by computers anytime soon. And number three, to succeed in business, you need to create relationships, not just within the organization, but also outside with your clients and your stakeholders. And that's something, again, where AI will not be so useful. And so, on that note, I'd like to close it and open the floor for questions. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, Professor. My name is Ade Bintang from UGM. So basically, as you mentioned earlier, that we should not trust AI equally or fully trust trust the truth what the AI says, but sometimes the AI of explanation of explain. For example, there is a news or AI were in Germany that the speech of the the machinery is by the AI and it attracts a large crowd of group of Germany's peoples and people thinks this what AI says is thinks this is the truth of what the AI says. But what I want to question is how to distinguish when the AI is not not speak truthfully enough and when the AI is speak truthfully enough. But because as we seen from what I use ChatGPT, what I am seeing is 80% of the ChatGPT's answer is predictably accurately enough. But yeah, how to reduce the bias and how to use those bias for making decision and making a corrective information from AI. That is my question.
Thank you very much for a very good question. It's very hard to answer that. One, let me be pragmatic. If you have a girlfriend or just a good friend, and he or she says something to you, do you believe her at face value, or will you try to check whether what she or she says is correct? Or even a professor, would you just believe what he or she says in front of you? You shouldn't. You're checking it, isn't it? No? Or you always say yes, oh, the truth. He's a truth-speaking person, always correct. Infallible. No, right? So you would check. My attitude, for example, to Facebook, I don't believe anything what's on Facebook. I'm educated, I'm an old folk now. I'm educated as a philosopher as well, who thinks critically. We are trying, that's exactly what the ambassador said yesterday. He said, books, books, books. You should read, read, read. Why is that? And that's the beauty of an UGM, or University of Antwerp. As professors, when we publish, we are peer-reviewed. Other academics researchers or checking whatever we say, is it correct or not? Is it according to the objective facts? Facebook, there's nobody checking. But Twitter, but it's there. The rubbish on it, it's incredible. Why would you believe what's happening written there? I give an example. Last night, I'm interested in geopolitics. And for whatever strange reason, I got hooked up to Facebook, which I usually don't. And it said, Putin is at the end of his career. There's going to be a coup against Putin. Would you believe it? Well, if you think Facebook is so wonderful because it's accurate in predicting, no, what Facebook does is picking up data, all the rubbish we issue on it, combining it, finding association patterns, and then telling this is what it is. But that's doxa in philosophy. These are opinions. Opinions are not necessarily facts. So I would say, you're at a good university, try to reflect and try to, if you write a thesis, that's why we require academic papers, not just journalists. So there's a difference between Facebook, which is rubbish, and then you have journalists, which are opinionated, smart people, but they have opinions, and that's their function. And then you have academics, which are supposed to reflect and stick to the field of objective facts, with the exception of certain philosophers and sociologists and anthropologists that have the ability to think about this ethical stuff. But even there, you need to still reflect. So I make a big distinction between what is objective and what is subjective. And for me, Facebook is nothing but subjectivity. That has its function. And it maybe is the function that people can express their frustration, but it's getting to a stance that it creates hate, jealousy, which to me is not a positive feeling. I believe in feelings, but like everything in life, it needs to be balanced. And if you go to one extreme and you ignore the other, you're imbalanced. And therefore, to me, in the case of Facebook or Twitter, or TikTok is even worse. So yeah, no, I mean, I'm exaggerating, obviously, to make you aware, because I know you're the generation that loves this kind of social media. I'm a little bit worried about social media. But I think social media has, of course, positive effects. So I'm not fully against it, obviously. But I don't see it as okay, I don't know. Today they can make fake videos. Meaning, what I mean by, what are you called? How do you call that? Deep fake. In fact, there's a Belgian guy. Do you see The Voice or Talent for America? So there's a Belgian guy who basically, with an algorithm, is able to, I think it was Elvis Presley singing or something, and somebody's singing, and they can mimic based on the data, and you see Elvis on the screen as if he's alive singing right now. It's an algorithm translating the voice. Now, at the end, you don't know anymore, is this true or not? And the danger is, if these deep fakes are going to be used for political reasons, to create hate and jealousy and whatever it is, now then we're getting into a situation where you don't see the distinction anymore between what is true and what is false. And it becomes to an extent where it's blurring. And therefore you need to be extremely critical. And so yeah, it's a difficult world in that sense. Now from a business perspective, and that's where the ugly part of business, I'm a businessman, okay? I'm favoring AI for that reason as well. But as a philosopher, I do have to admit, those that have the power and control and own algorithms have a responsibility. Responsibility is an ethical word. They also have an accountability to their shareholders. That's a governance or an economic notion. But responsibility, the word responsibility, is related to this consciousness that I was referring to. And that's an ethical decision. I cannot say that's objective, but I feel it's the right thing to do. So yeah, it's not easy, I do admit. But be critical. And if you make your own papers, I don't think you're using Facebook as your source, do you? Well, here it is. So why would you then, if you don't use it for your paper and you want objective truth, that would be my answer. But yes, it'll be more complex and complicated. Thank you for the question, though. Other questions? Yes.
Sorry, from the data displayed earlier by the professor, show that the 5 top are the jobs can be replaced by AI, and how can we integrate and collaborate from this technology, because the top data is afraid about accounting jobs, while the whole world has a lot of detail about education, about accounting. Will they experience a job crisis? Thank you.
Yeah, so your question basically is, there are certain areas within economics where AI will take over certain tasks from human beings in accounting. It's true. Basically, anything that is familiar and repetitive, that doesn't require creativity, within a stable environment, can be done by a machine. So if you talk about a balance sheet and a profit and loss statement to make that, then obviously, if we apply the GAAP, the General Accepted Accounting Practices in Indonesia or Belgium or Europe, these are things that we've done for 250 years already. So there's a lot of data. You can train an algorithm that can accurately do a good job, almost as good as a basic accountant. But of course, you still need accountancy and accountancy professionals to interpret bookkeeping, because a computer does bookkeeping, which is slightly different from accounting still. I'm not an accountant, I'm more a finance person interpreting accountancy. But yes, let me give a more mundane example. If we have, we all have flown airplanes, right? Most of you have sit in an airplane, and you definitely did. Otherwise you wouldn't sit here. We know that today the Airbuses and the Boeings and whatever you have are so sophisticated with algorithms that even today it can the whole process of takeoff up to landing can be done almost automatically. But we still want a pilot there. Why? Because during takeoff and landing, the variables, and therefore the data, can still be so wide that you still want to have that flexibility and plasticity of a human being, a pilot, to make sure that we know what to do. But once you're in the air, it's called automatic pilot, isn't it? But we still want a human to take the decision, smart decision, when we land and we take off. But in fact, it can be completely automated. So the same for accounting. Today, computers, the pure processes, under stable environment, hence why the pilot, if it's unstable, even if a lot of data of weather changes, the weather is so unpredictable that there's still variables that may not be in the data, and we don't want to take that risk. Hence why we need the flexibility and the plasticity of that human being. So in accounting, the same thing. If it's a pure bookkeeping, don't bother. That's why we outsource it to a bookkeeper. We call it a bookkeeper or an accountant. But if you talk about more about your tax planning, you don't want just a computer telling you how to make taxes. And here, to be careful, because that's also ethics. We all want to minimize our tax liabilities. And accountants are very good. They call it tax planning. You can call whatever you want. And I'm willing to explain the stories about this. I was a director of a public listed company for a short time. And I was responsible for the finance. And so, yes, I was responsible for the accounting and sign off as a director. And I have to admit, I was under pressure by the owner to do things that are not kosher. Now that's where you interpret accounting data. That's not what a computer can do. They need a human being that is ethical or not ethical to do that. So yes, definitely, robots, if you look to manufacturing, even Foxconn in China, making all this, they have more and more robots. Why? Why would they have robots? Why not human beings? It's cheap anyway. Why is Foxconn changing humans into robots? Well, not changing, replacing humans with robots. It's very cynical. That's the bad stuff, in fact. Why? Why is Foxconn changing cheap labor by computers?
It's faster and more accurate.
It's more accurate, faster, yeah, maybe.
They don't get sick.
They don't get sick, they don't complain, they don't suicide. Because Foxconn got into troubles, reputation-wise, a couple of years ago, Apple particularly, because they were making the iPhones, suicides. Tough circumstance. An algorithm doesn't complain. It's intelligent enough to do what it's been told to do until further notice. And that further notice, I hope, will be in 100 years from now. Okay, that's... So yes, the point is, in repetitive tasks, you see clearly, even in China, even I suspect soon in Indonesia, you will see more and more robotics taking over certain jobs. So the future, to me, for people like yourself, is that creativity. In any field, be it in accounting, but also in finance, in production, in marketing, something that a computer may not be able to do in the next 20, 30, 40 years. I cannot see in the future in 100 years, but I still believe very strongly that conscious machines is an oxymoron, meaning it cannot be, because consciousness is related to values. Value is related to thinking ahead as a human being about ethical values. Now, it is possible that we may have robots that think very differently from human beings and may take us over. That is possible. I don't know. I hope not, but that's a possibility. I don't exclude that. But it will not be a mimicking of... It's not that in vivo, in real life, and in silicon, that you can completely mimic that. Organically, it took us millions of years to be who we are. You cannot in 10 years do that with a machine. That's my real argument. And that's where the wisdom comes in. Wisdom has to do with who we are as a human being. Why are we doing this? As a business person, yes, I feel, and I had experience with my team, I had to inspire my team. Do you know, if you're going to work for a company, you don't do it just for your salary. Kalau you join in perusahaan, gaji penting, betul ya? Tapi ada yang lain, ada yang gaji dong. Right? Yeah, exactly. So you don't just do it for your money, even if you paid well. If your boss is a crook, or sorry to say, maaf ya, why would you stay? Leave. Because that's to do with values, with your feelings. There's a very interesting, what's it now? Game. It's called the ultimatum game. Can I still do 2 minutes? Oh, you literally take it 2 minutes. Okay, apparently, let me be personal. I had a team, and I had a wonderful team from Indonesians, Australians, and I know that one of my Indonesian directors left me, although he's still a friend of me after 30 years now, but he left me because he got an opportunity by an American company where his salary was doubled, and that's what his official reason was. His real reason was different. He said, Pete, and he told me much later, he was in Indonesia and he was responsible for my operations here, from Hong Kong up to here. But he had the aspiration to work for a multinational, and he went to Singapore. He's still based in Singapore. And so, in that case, salary was a motivator, but there were other factors. His wife, he wanted to have his daughter educated in Singapore, in the US, and with the salary that I paid, which was not bad, I paid him $1,000, which is about 20 years ago, which is berapa? 15 juta. It's not bad, right? And he was just graduated from UI. That's a high salary. But he could make still double, a couple of years after he was with me, in Singapore, more than double, triple. But it was not the salary only, it was because he got education for his daughter and so on and so forth. So meaning, what I'm trying to say, there are other factors to keep somebody. It's never just pure the money. One more question. I know I'm over my 2 minutes, but is there more questions? Antwerp is basically boycotting me. That's fine. You can talk to me the next 2 weeks. It's fine. All right. Thank you so much for having me, and wish you all the best.